Hey there, everybody, and welcome once again to Nose in the Book, a Bible reading commentary with me, your host, Pastor Justin Van Reed. So great to have you with me as we take a look at 5 more chapters from the Word of God. Today we've got 1 Samuel chapter 2, Romans chapter 2, Jeremiah chapter 40, and Psalms 15 and 16. So as it is with all the other days, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post those in the comments section below. Otherwise, let's take a look at what we've got here before us. First off, 1 Samuel chapter 2, in light of what happened in 1 Samuel chapter 1, where Hannah had come to Shiloh, to the tabernacle, been praying before the Lord, and Eli told her that she would have a son. Sure enough, she has a son. She brings Samuel, just as she has promised to give and dedicate to the Lord. Chapter 2 here is a record of Hannah's prayer. And we read here about how the Lord takes care of the lowly. Sounds very much like a psalm here. She says that her heart rejoices in the Lord. That there is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God. That the proud and haughty are brought low, but those who are low are lifted up. And you have to wonder if this isn't. Her enemy that she's speaking of here is Peninnah, the other wife that had been mocking her for being barren. So she says, that the childless woman now has 7 children. The woman with many children wastes away. The Lord gives both death and life. He brings some down to the grave, but raises others up. The Lord makes some poor, others rich. So this equalizing that God has done here in bringing justice to this one. Really grace to this one who had been barren. And so she's rejoicing in the Lord and then returns home here. Now, the rest of the chapter goes on to describe the sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas. And it describes them this way in verse 12. They were scoundrels who had no respect for the Lord or for their duties as priests. And they used to take advantage as priests of the food. See, the priests were fed through the sacrifices that were brought by the people. And but here it says, whenever anyone offered a sacrifice, Eli's sons would send over a servant with a 3-pronged fork. And while the meat of the sacrificed animal was still boiling, the servant would stick the fork into the pot and demand that whatever it brought up be given to Eli's sons. So everything, in essence, is going to go to Hophni and Phinehas here. And it says sometimes the servant would come even before the animal's fat had been burned on the altar. He would demand raw meat before it had been boiled so that it could be used for roasting. So not only are they taking the worshiper's portion, but they're taking the Lord's portion from the sacrifice here. And so this is just a disaster here. And even taking it by force. They have the servant come and do this. So it says the sin of these young men was very serious in the Lord's sight, for they treated the Lord's offerings with contempt. Meanwhile, Samuel, he's only a boy. He's serving the Lord. So you've got this contrast between Samuel growing up in the presence of the Lord, doing what honors the Lord, and Hophni and Phinehas who disobey. And because of this, a warning comes to Eli's family that the priesthood is going to be that Eli's priesthood is going to be cut off. So he says, the time is coming when I will put an end to your family, so it will no longer serve as my priests. All the members of your family will die before their time. None will reach old age. And he says, then I will raise up a faithful priest who will serve me and do what I desire. I will establish his family, and they will be priests to my anointed kings forever. So this is the situation here in 1 Samuel 2 with these wicked priests in Shiloh. All right, then we go to Romans chapter 2, and here, again, building off of chapter 1, Paul's argument about the universality of sin, and here describing not just the Gentiles that are guilty, as he described in chapter 1, but now also in chapter 2 here, the fact that even the Jewish people, that everybody is guilty here, right? So he says, you may think you can condemn such people, but you're just as bad. You have no excuse. When you say they are wicked and should be punished, you're condemning yourself because you do the very same things. He goes on to describe here how everyone's going to be judged based on what they've done. So who's the guilty one? He says when the Gentiles sin, they'll be judged, even though they never had God's written law. But the Jews who do have God's law will also be judged by that law when they fail to obey it. And he goes on to describe it here. He says, you call yourselves Jews or relying on God's law. You boast about your relationship with him. You know what he wants. You know what's right. And yet, he says, if you teach others, right, here's wrong, why don't you teach yourselves? You tell others don't steal, but do you steal? You say it's wrong to commit adultery, but do you commit adultery? In other words, everybody is guilty. Everybody sins. And he goes on to say that merely saying, oh, I'm Jewish, merely being part of God's covenanted people, merely being circumcised and having those other Jewish boundary markers that mark you off as part of the Jewish faith, he says that ultimately ends up being nothing as far as salvation is concerned because you're guilty of sin. He says the true Jewish person, the one who really belongs to the Lord, is the one not who had any kind of religious acts or is just merely Jewish because of birth or had circumcision, but he says a true Jew is one whose heart is right with God. True circumcision is not merely obeying the letter of the law, it's a change of heart produced by the Spirit. And so that is the goal here. So he's setting up again his argument here that everybody is guilty before the Lord and everybody needs salvation through Jesus Christ equally. All right, back to the Old Testament, Jeremiah chapter 40. And here, after the exile has taken place, this Zaradan, the captain of the Babylonians' guard here, comes and finds Jeremiah, who had been arrested previously, and agrees to release him. And basically, interestingly enough, describes that God gave over the land. That this is a Babylonian general speaking, saying that the reason we were able to conquer you, Jeremiah, and your people is because the Lord has done it. Wow, what a statement from a Gentile Babylonian guard. And then tells Jeremiah, basically, I'm going to free you. You have two options. You can come with us to Babylon. You'll be welcome there. You'll be well cared for. But you can also stay here with Gedaliah, who is the appointed governor by the Babylonians, just kind of overseeing the affairs of what's going on in Jerusalem. And Nebuzaradan frees Jeremiah, but Jeremiah decides to stay here in Judah. All right, meanwhile, you have Gedaliah, this governor, who's ruling over basically the remaining people that have been left in Judah. And he's warned by some of his guys here that this guy Ishmael has been sent to assassinate you. So he's going to come and assassinate you. But in the end here, we read that Gedaliah doesn't believe it and, tells him basically, stop telling tales outside of school. Verse 16, Gedaliah said to Yohanan, I forbid you to do any such thing, for you are lying about Ishmael, because Yohanan had said, let me put Ishmael to death. All right, then we lastly come here to Psalm 15 and 16. First of all, Psalm 15, here's the kind of heart, right, that God is looking for, right? Who is it? What does it look like to come to a sanctuary? Is it merely to have, to be there, to be present? Is it merely to, fold your hands and close your eyes and, think thoughts of the Lord and say the right things? But he says, no, look, it's this life, this fruit-bearing life. He says, who lead blameless lives, do what is right, speak the truth, refuse to gossip, refuse to speak evil, keep their promises even when it hurts, lend money without charging interest, something talked about in the law of Moses. Such people, he says, will stand firm forever. So that's what God is looking for, the kind of person, the kind of heart that God is looking for when we come to worship. It's not just about what's external, but who are we really? And then Psalm 16 here, Psalm calling for protection from the Lord. Protect me, God, I trust in you. Reflects on the fact that the Lord is always with me. Right? He says, I will bless the Lord who guides me. Even at night, my heart instructs me. I know the Lord is always with me. I will not be shaken, for he is right beside me. What great confidence we find there. And then in the end here, verse 11, right? Just how cool is this? You will show me the way of life, granting me the joy of your presence and the pleasures of living with you forevermore, right? So what do we really want? What is going to be the most pleasure-giving thing, the most satisfying, soul-satisfying thing that's going to bring true and everlasting joy? He says it's being in the Lord's presence. The Lord himself is the prize. The Lord himself, right? It's not, all kinds of material things or whatever we get in this life, but having the Lord, being in relationship with the Lord, that is the greatest. And that is the most joy-giving thing. And what an experience it is to know the Lord and walk with the Lord. I hope you know him and are walking with him, that you're having that heart that comes before him every day, not counting on any externals, right? What a relationship here between Psalm 15 and Romans chapter 2, as we saw earlier. All right, that's all we have time for today. Thanks for being with me these last few minutes as we looked at 1 Samuel 2, Romans 2, Jeremiah 40, Psalm 15, and Psalm 16. Until next time, keep your eyes on the Lord and your nose in the book. We'll see you again soon.